I love video games. I collect old games and their systems, I play indies, big budget titles, I follow news surrounding them. It's a hobby that I'm very passionate about, and one that at the moment I'm also very pissed about. This video is pretty much just going to be me blowing off steam because of the recent release of that Lord of the Rings Gollum game, because it has done nothing but filled me with pure anger for a multitude of reasons. Well, besides being absolutely atrocious.
The Great Red, my eyes!
But the biggest reason is this damn thing here. Now, to those of you who aren't big into gaming, this might not make a lot of sense to you. The developers are apologizing for the state of the game and working on it to make it better. I mean, isn't that a good thing? Well, it would be, if Respawn didn't just put one out for Jedi Survivor, or Arcane with Redfall, or Square Enix with Forspoken, or DICE with Battlefield 2042, or 343 with Halo Infinite, or CD Projekt Red with Cyberpunk 2077. It is absolutely exhausting. Time and time again, we are seeing developers being pushed to the absolute limits of their capabilities in order to meet deadlines set up by higher-ups, and then take backlash from fans when the games come out in broken states, and then they have to have an apology statement ready. The ratio between big budget games that are and aren't broken is being made wider and wider. For every Elden Ring, there's a Saints Row reboot. For every God of War, there's a Back 4 Blood. For every Doom Eternal, there's a Cyberpunk 2077. It's getting so tiring seeing so many games being released broken at launch time and time again. We are continuing to see the incompetent failure of high-budget video games coming out in piss-poor states, and the developers having to basically say,
"Sorry. We're sorry. We're sorry."
You know, after they already take your money. And this isn't even the usual suspects like Electronic Arts or Activision, who you think would be the ones doing this alone. But they're just the regulars. Because it's literally the entire industry. Small Polish studios like CD Projekt Red have screwed up. Multi-billion-dollar companies like Microsoft have screwed up. And don't even get me started on the shit Square Enix has been trying to pull, because where do I even begin with them? Honestly, even though I'm making this video because of the stupid Gollum game no one cared for, it was just so bad and it hit all of the right notes when it came to modern gaming. It's just representative of what gaming is like nowadays. A game releases and tends to either not be taking advantage of the powerful hardware it'll be running on, be filled with glitches everywhere, or be overpriced, and tend to have content that should have been in the base game be sold as DLC and microtransactions, or all of those at the same time. What I just described is applicable to way too many modern day releases that come out in this state time and time again, every damn year. And sure, there will still be solid games with little to no caveats, like your Hi-Fi Rushes, your Dead Space remakes, and Hogwarts Legacies, and so on, but we're seeing fewer of those kinds of W's and more L's, like Redfall, Overwatch 2, and so on, which usually happens because of publishers trying to rush these products out to market. We shouldn't be forgetting about that famous quote that Shigeru Miyamoto, the Mario Zelda guy himself, said. "Just release the damn game when it's actually complete." I might have paraphrased that a little bit. But on top of all that bad stuff, so many more games are being released as live services as well, where developers talk about supporting these games with years and years of content, only to pull the plug on them in less than 5, if even. Looking back at good old Square Enix again, their Avengers game is the perfect example of this, releasing half-baked in 2019 and now getting shut down in September of 2023, even after promising to support the game for years and years after release. I mean, launching an Avengers game to be a weird online looter-shooter thing with lackluster gameplay and little content just a year after the incredible PlayStation Spider-Man game?
Not a great plan.
The market for these live service games have become so oversaturated, seeing so many being released onto the market, but with nothing for you to do in them, having barely any content at launch, leading to people leaving en masse to play other, better games. Companies want you to play these games forever, keeping your attention on them for as long as possible, but they make them without realizing the oversaturation these types of games have caused. Like, Sony had a presentation recently announcing a bunch of games, and like 4 of them were online multiplayer live service games. And I was just thinking to myself, how much free time do these companies expect us to have in order to play all these games? I have no doubt a good portion of them are going to be released with either not enough content to justify playing them for long, or not get updates in a reasonable time, on top of being $70. I'm sorry, but your generic Watch Dogs cross payday type game thing, whatever, isn't gonna be enough to hook me in. I'll just go back to replaying Fallout 4 for the millionth time. I mean, this modern day live service thing is even more depressing when some of the most renowned franchises in gaming are constantly being ruined by the trends set in modern gaming. Like Halo. I don't own an Xbox, and I really haven't touched an Xbox console at all, and I've been a PlayStation guy ever since I was a kid. But even I knew Halo was one of the coolest games ever. But after the divisive reception of Halos 4 and 5, 343 Industries really needed to knock it out of the park with the next entry, Halo Infinite. Many were looking forward to it. It had a lot riding on it and seemed to be promising. The trailers were hype as all hell, the campaign looked interesting, the multiplayer beta was insanely fun, harkening back to the original games, and it was even delayed so that 343 could polish it up more. A lot of time and effort were being put into it, but not enough. While the campaign was received more positively than the previous two titles, the multiplayer had barely anything to do. The actual core of the gameplay, like the shooting and stuff, was fun. It was solid, but everything else was sorely lacking. The multiplayer launched with 10 maps in 6 modes in 2021. It now has 15 maps in 9 modes in 2023. Also take into consideration that the fact that not all modes and maps work with each other, and that 343 is owned by Microsoft, one of the biggest corporations on Earth.
Excuse me, what?
Now here's something fun. Let's compare the current Steam chart numbers for Infinite and a popular indie game I play. Here's the Steam chart numbers for Infinite.
Ooh, that's kind of small.
And now compare those numbers to that of an indie FPS, one that I love oh so much, known as Deep Rock Galactic.
That's quite big.
How do we live in a day and age where Halo, the world-renowned FPS, being one of the most revered gaming franchises in history, and having one of the most iconic characters in gaming, now having a free-to-play multiplayer on probably the most popular platform, be doing worse than an indie game? Well, it's quite simple actually. DRG actually has content and updates. The biggest reason why Halo Infinite was a disappointment was because it was released without enough multiplayer content, and it subsequently wasn't updated fast enough to meet the expectations of players, and 343 themselves had. And things like the cancellation of split-screen co-op didn't exactly help the matter either. It's just really sad to see even massive juggernauts like Halo absolutely fumble it nowadays because of this obsession with the release it now, finish later mentality developers have been doing time and time again. And some of you might be pointing to me and saying that it's not fair to compare Halo, a mainly Xbox crowd-heavy game, to that of a game that started out on PC, and I would say that you have a point since the numbers of Infinite players on Xbox are probably much bigger than PC players, but at the same time, Infinite had way more going for it on PC. It was the first Halo game to have a free multiplayer, but also be the first brand new Halo game on PC. Comparing the all-time peaks between the two games shows Halo had quadruple the number of players DRG ever had, and even its average player count was higher until March of 2022, and it dropped off by that point because no big updates were being released for Halo. So the fact that a $30 indie game has more active players and consistent updates than a free multiplayer game of a famous gaming franchise revered for its incredible multiplayer, also having the backing of one of the biggest companies in the world, is insane to me. And speaking of Deep Rock Galactic, compared to many of the massive games being released by major publishers, indie titles are outshining them tenfold. And it's nice to see these small developers get the recognition that they deserve for their accomplishments. I mean, the fact that these games are so good that they can rival other bigger ones is awesome. Like the fact that Hades, among other higher big budget games, was in the running for that year's Game of the Year shows how far these kinds of games have come. But it's equally unfortunate that those big games had to suffer in the first place, making people not as interested in most of them. Like, I'm not joking when I say I was more interested in The Plucky Squire than almost all of the other big publisher games shown off at Sony's State of Play. Like, that's how much I do not care about most of those big games anymore. But really, the biggest thing that made me want to make this video besides the Gollum game was The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. I'm already planning on doing a massive video on that game in the future to talk about it in depth, but what I want to say about it here is that why is it that a game that's $70, but also not graphically superior to other games, reuses an entire map from the previous entry and other assets, and is running on 6-year-old hardware, being lauded as one of the best games of all time, compared to other releases like Jedi Survivor, for instance? Well, because it was actually finished. Besides the vast amount of other reasons as to why Tears of the Kingdom is getting more critical acclaim compared to other games at the moment, it's also a complete game that not only provides a new experience that you couldn't get in Breath of the Wild, but it actually works on release. It may have reused assets like an entire map, but it made changes to almost every part of it and filled it with new locations on top of creating new areas. And sure, there are moments where the game may stutter or slow down and have a couple of technical difficulties and hiccups here and there, but that is solely because of the half-decade-old Switch hardware, not the game itself. The fact that a console that old and underpowered can do things like going from the Sky Islands all the way down to the depths with almost no issues, but a game like Star Wars Jedi Survivor running on powerful modern hardware like PS5 and Xbox Series X can't even work properly is absolutely pathetic. Zelda was fully completed in 2022, playable and all, but it was delayed solely for the developers to polish the game and make it as good as it possibly could be. And it shows in the final product. This is something I think other publishers could learn a thing or two from. I mean, if anything, if companies just want to follow the money and reap similar rewards as Zelda did, then I would suggest that they follow what Nintendo did with developing their games going forward. Modern gaming sucks right now. There are great games that still continue to come out, but they are so few and far between all of the garbage being peddled out with them. And even when there are legitimately great games being released, they're marred by either heavy technical issues or they're released with so little content that people don't stick around long enough for them to release the stuff that should have been in the game at the get-go. And that $70 price tag really doesn't make any of this any more fun. Well, I mean, it is funny to think that some dumbass at Square Enix really believed that people would pay that much for goddamn Forspoken.
Just moved shit with my mind.
I just keep hearing I.
I just moved shit with my freaking mind!
Oh! Ew! Dude! What the fuck?
But really, I'm just numb to all of this. It's unfortunate to see these kinds of things happen, but there's really nothing you can do except vote with your wallet. I sure as hell know I'm gonna wait and see if games like Jedi Survivor get discounted heavily, so at least I know it'll be worth my money when it's cheap enough. And I get this video started out as frustration against that dumbass Gollum game, but really, it was yet another modern-day game to come out in a piss-poor state and overcharge people for it, with a developer apology statement to back it up, adding yet another one to the collection. The game represents the worst of gaming in the modern day, and how damn prevalent the issues I talked about are. I hate that even in the year 2023, with the most powerful consoles and beefy PCs of all time, we're still getting broken game releases on top of getting charged extra for them, and it's just getting worse. But I think I've rambled on long enough. Gaming nowadays is more frustrating than ever, and I just want to see it get better. But it's probably going to be a long time until there's real change. And I think I'll just catch up on my backlog in the meantime. Anyways, thank you for listening to me go off. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like, and if you have any thoughts on modern game releases, leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.